observe a moment of silence. You're going to hear the bells ring 11 times. Bells of peace, they're called. 21 times at the hour of 11. We're going to have a hand salute. And me at the hour. This is the rehearsal. Okay?
Yes.
At the hour of 11, we're going to have a moment of silence. And you'll hear the bells of peace ring 21 times. And the Girl Scouts will come forward and do the Pledge of Allegiance for us. Then the day school will sing the national anthem. And we'll go on from there. The hour of 11 signifies the end of World War I. 100 years ago was the founding of the American Legion.
Beautiful.
And salute. Girl Scouts, please assemble right here. Looking good. Make ranks. Uncover for the Pledge of Allegiance. Uncover, hand on heart. Let's hear it. All together, let it loud. Facing me.
Right hand.
Hand on heart.
That's hot.
Which is one nation, under God, indivisible, Thank you very much.
Way to go.
Hands up for the national anthem and salute. You guys do what you want. We salute. We're veterans.
For the ramparts we watch
Secret job, but just a case.
Yes, nice job.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Bravissimo.
Enjoy that. Don't stay because it's a party. Well, need a party. Chaplain will offer a prayer. Uncover.
Speak. O God of hosts, we bow our heads in thankfulness for the victories thou hast granted us and those peoples who have united with us to stamp out the evils of aggression, intolerance, and greed. We beseech thee to bring the blessings of understanding to the families and friends in this and other lands of those who have given their lives so that men may be free. Grant, O God, that those closest to the fallen may mingle the pain of their losses with the ennobling light of sacrifice for civilization, sacrifice for a better world for this and generations yet to come. Grant us too, O God, the patience in planning with our fellow men and women a world in which nations may resolve their differences by peaceful means. Touch the souls of people in every land with the enduring light of wisdom, so that they may form a brotherhood which will strive to further the arts of peace and ethics, blessed by your love. Grant us now your continued blessing of unity and strength that makes victories possible in war, that we may win greater victories of peace. Amen.
On this Veterans Day, we are commemorating the service of veterans of all wars. We remember how men and women set aside their civilian pursuits to serve their nation's cause, defending the freedom of mankind and preserving our precious heritage. We believe our strength in the field of battle on the supply line, which nourished our might, lay in the justice of our cause against the forces of evil. We believe our determination made us better warriors because we fought with our minds and with our hearts. We recognize service to our country and our cause does not end with the termination of military service. We continue our endeavors on behalf of an honorable world peace and the feeling of profound gratitude to God and to the men and women who gave their lives as part of the cost of this noblest of causes. Our blood and sweat we learned of purpose, sacrifice, tolerance, and bravery, and discipline. These are the foundation stones upon which a great nation is built. In our continuing quest for an honorable world peace, we must cultivate these virtues. Auxiliary President's going to read some words for us. Kathy?
Very good.
The waging of war involves more than just the combatants on the field of battle. The fighting forces begin at the far side and in the hometowns. Repercussions of war's brutality have chilled the heart and dimmed the hopes of loved ones on the home front. We move forward with a unity of purpose, forgetting pettiness, egotism, and pride. Our hearts beat in tune with those in other nations fighting for freedom and the dignity of mankind. In our constant quest for an honorable world peace, there is need for unity of purpose if we truly are to move forward a brighter tomorrow.
Thank you.
Robert's Richard.
The hurts of war fall alike upon those who wear the same uniform, no matter how they may differ in race, creed, or culture. Those who fight together, suffer together to achieve a common aim. In the similarity of battle dress, there's a common denominator, a common purpose, the sharing of danger and suffering, which brings in a time of war a tolerance which adds strength to the cause. As we put aside the brown and blue and green fabrics that made us one people on the battlefields, we can hold in our minds that tolerance we have achieved. In tolerance, there is progress toward a better and a happier world.
Dominic?
Our service has taught us the lesson of obedience to command. The game is more than the player, and the ship is more than the crew. There is a greater discipline now we must pursue if we are to preserve the virtue of obedience in our quest for an honorable world peace. That is obedience to the laws that we ourselves make, and the voluntary discipline of citizenship. Under our system of government, we may change the laws by the majority rule. We may persuade our neighbors to new ideas. We may advocate in free elections. As good citizens, we follow the choice of the majority, whether that choice be of the individual or not. This is the virtue of discipline which must be ours in peace. This is the lesson we must learn at home, in school, and on the playing field, in the organizations and in the communities and as a nation. It is the lesson of voluntary obedience to the decisions of the majority.
Good morning. By virtue of your attendance today, it is clear that you hold our nation's heroes in high esteem. Comrades, warrior echoes, SPG Corps are words that we can use to describe what it means to be a veteran and have served in our nation's military. In each other, we find community, we find American Legion, veteran of foreign war post, we find it in a familiar decal on a rear window of car passing by. We often see ourselves in others. The commitment of caring for American veterans is one that transcends patriotship. It's a commitment that covers all races, genders, all faiths. The American Legion knows that service doesn't stop when the uniform comes off. As veterans, we are actually aware of the sacrifices made by our servicemen. We are equally aware of the cost of these sacrifices. We know the value of lessons that our military service bestowed upon. So to those that came before me, to those I have the privilege to serve with, and those who have followed, thank you for your selflessness. Service today, we honor all those who have served in our nation's uniforms. God bless you for being here. God bless these United States.
It's also my chance now to introduce some of our elected officials. And this is the Village of Mamaroneck, so the first person I call upon is Mayor Tom Burke.
Yay.
So far, so good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for being here today. It's an important ceremony. We are honoring the men and women who have stood between us and evil, between us and our enemies. They have fought and they have stood guard for generations. And they have helped to keep us free and to make us the country that we are today. And we owe all of these gentlemen that you see in the hats, and a lot of the folks you see in the audience wearing their military hats, a big thanks each and every day. We picked today to remember them, but they deserve our honor and respect every day of the year. Thank you all very much. You know, the people who have defended our liberty over these centuries, they came on the Mayflower, they came in the middle passage of the cruel slavery ships, they came on the coffin ships, they came through Ellis Island, they came over to Rio Grande, but they all became Americans, because that's who we are. We are a mix of this whole world. And this is an experiment to see if you could do that and make it work. And we've made it work for hundreds of years. And we have to continue making it work by remembering what makes us one. There's so much and so many times that people try and divide us. But these ceremonies, it's important to remember that this is who we are. We're one people, no matter where we came from or where our ancestors came from on this globe. And we owe it to these children that are here and did such a great job to remember that you know, what binds us together is stronger than what's trying to pull us apart. And I just want to tell one quick story. I'm privileged. A few months ago, I started working. I'm an elevator mechanic. I'm working fixing the elevators at the Bronx VA Medical Center. I'm sure some of you gentlemen know it, down in Kingsbridge Road. And I started working at taking care of the elevators. And in the middle of this, some of you might have noticed, I was in the middle of a re-election campaign with my friend Mr. Rosenberg. And having both of those experiences at the same time gave me a kind of aha moment. You know, I was at work and I got on the elevator at the top floor and I was coming down, and as I'm coming down, more and more veterans get on the elevator, and they're very large elevators. And during any political campaign, you draw up a list of your vast accomplishments and your extensive municipal and volunteer experience. It's a bit embarrassing, and it's an ego inflation, but it's part of the game. When I was on this elevator with all these veterans, and they ranged in age from the Korean and Vietnam War through our most recent conflicts, I was looking around the elevator, and the truth hit me like a brick on my thick Irish skull. Every one of those guys on that elevator has done more, given more, and sacrificed more for his community and his nation than I can ever begin to imagine, and certainly never match. It made me feel lucky to be working around such Americans, and it made me feel a little silly to be obsessing about my own self-promotion. I hope we always have governments on every level worthy of the sacrifice of the men and women I see every day at the Veterans Hospital, who gave us all more than we had any right to ask of them. Thank you all for being here. Have a good day.
Yes, amen. What about women veterans? That's right. We thank all veterans for their service. We thank men veterans, and we thank women veterans. I want to introduce Deputy Town Supervisor, Town Councilwoman Janie Elkin Henry. Amy. Okay.
Good morning. Last Thursday, I attended the Veterans event at Mamaroneck High School. Can you hear me? At Mamaroneck High School.
Yes.
After a brief ceremony, a group of veterans, many of you I see here today, gathered outside at the Kemper Memorial. The skies were threatening, but you were there, and you gave the gift of your time to a group of middle school students, answering their questions and telling them anecdotes about your experiences. You brought history alive to them, and that was an incredible gift. And as I stood and watched the scene, it struck me what an incredible gift of time you've given all of us. Then you served your country, our country, risking your lives to preserve and protect our way of life, our freedom, and our America. And you continue to give the gift of time. You give your gift of time now to your community, our community. And we are all enriched by the participation in all of the events and all of the things you do. So I want to thank you on behalf of all of us for the gift of your time, your service, past and present. We owe you a deep debt of gratitude. Thank you so much.
County Supervisor George Latimer is here today.
We meet here on the site of an American battlefield, Heathcote Hill. There was a skirmish in 1776, a few months after we declared our independence from Britain. And the brave men in Philadelphia who wrote the Declaration of Independence and signed their name and their honor knew that it wasn't going to be easy to break free from Britain, and it was not. And it was loss of life right here, right in this neighborhood, this very neighborhood. I don't know how many of the kids realize that, but when we talk about what our brave military men and women have done, we think of them in terms of Normandy, and we think of them in terms of Way, and we think in terms of Pork Chop Hill. But right here on Heathcote Hill, American patriots stood up for our right to be independent and began this American experience. I asked my dad once when I was a kid watching a parade in the hometown that I grew up in, what the difference was, Daddy, between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Because as far as I was concerned, on both days there were parades and there was men marching. And when I was a kid, the World War II and Korea generation were men in their 40s, and the World War I generation were men in their 70s, 60s and 70s, and they were all vigorous and part of those parades. And I remember there was one elderly gentleman who was in a car, and he was a Spanish-American War veteran. And we looked at him like, you know, oh my God, this is unbelievable that somebody from all back then could be still with us. Now, of course, we've lost the World War I generation. We cling dearly to the World War II and the Korean generation. This day, though, was set aside to represent the signing of the armistice that ended what was then called the Great War. Well, we now call it World War I, because it was not the war to end all wars. We had hoped that that was the case at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, but we're also practical people. Human nature being what it is, the force of ambition around the world being what it is, there are forces that look to conquer and take over and impose a way of life. And within 20 years, there was an even bigger worldwide conflict. And then there was the Korean War, which wasn't a declared war, but was a war in every other way that could be a war. And then we had the Cold War for many years, which had its casualties as well. And in every one of those situations, through Vietnam, Desert Shield, Grenada, you name it, Afghanistan, Iraq, fighting ISIS, men and now women in almost equal proportion agree to go and put on the uniform of their country. When they put on the uniform of their country, for those of us who haven't done it, it ain't easy. Every one of these men will tell you what basic training was like. There was no picnic. Some drill sergeant's in your grill looking at you and tearing you down so that he can rebuild you as a fighting person. And as Frank Maresca said in his comments, the discipline and the obedience is essential in order to have the kind of military presence that we needed to fight successfully in the various conflicts that we've had. But Veterans Day, my dad told me, was about all veterans, not just those who made the eternal sacrifice of dying. And that means after basic training, if you were sent to a stateside post and you had KP duty, you were serving your country. And there were men and women who served this country in places where a shooting war did not break out, but on any given moment, it might have happened. When men and women were assigned to police West Berlin, that was a possibility any given day that the Russians would come across Checkpoint Charlie and you'd be in a shooting war. After the hot war in Korea ended, there were American presence along the DMZ. On any given day, the North Koreans could have come across that DMZ into South Korea, reignited the war, and those men in uniform risked that every day they woke up in the barracks. Every day they woke up on board a ship. There were ships that were out in the Atlantic Ocean that intercepted The Russian ships in 1962, when they were carrying missiles to Cuba, President Kennedy said, we're going to quarantine Cuba, we're going to stop those ships. I was a 9-year-old boy, we came this close. This close. And the men who were deployed at that point in time never did see a bullet fire across their face, but they were this close to giving their lives for this country. So whatever the circumstances are, we owe a debt to those who served in the military. And in some ways, it's a greater debt than we owe to anybody. We're a society that's generous. We believe in helping people. There are folks who are developmentally disabled. We ought to do things to help them. There are people that have certain physical disabilities. We should help them. Every child should get a good education. People in their senior years should have access to health care. But the veterans have gone beyond just being an American and existing. They made an extra sacrifice for us. So that sacrifice should be respected. We should get whatever's wrong with the VA straightened out and make it work the way it should work, as if that was the top priority of our national government. We're talking about a lot of things these days. We should get the VA straightened out as job one, so that these men get what they deserve. And the benefits that we and other governments can provide legally, we should be able to provide those to the veterans. And you know, there may be a discount when you play golf at Saxon Woods. I don't care. If that's a benefit to you, then that's a benefit and you deserve to have it. In final comment, I'd take a little bit longer than I should, and I know I've got Assemblyman Otis and Senator Mayer and County Legislator Catherine Park, and a lot of other folks here to show respect on this day. We say thank you, and sometimes it rings a little hollow because we say it so frequently. But in 1972, when I was eligible for the draft, I went to the draft board, I turned 18, I signed up, the lottery came up, I had 112, highest I ever did in any lottery ever. And I was waiting to go. And I knew I would go if I was called. And then in 1972, at that time, President Nixon didn't call us up. He was winding down the war. And I think to myself how concerned I was about going to Vietnam and what I thought it was like and what older brothers of my friends had told me. And it didn't come to my pass that I would have gone. And then I think about all the guys that did that and what they saw there. How could we not be appreciative? They made the sacrifice that most of the rest of us did. God bless you, men and women. And may you always be remembered forever in this nation.
Thank you. So talk about veterans and different service eras. Something, now, what do you say to a Vietnam era veteran on top of the war? And it's an overdue thing to say. You say, welcome home. I want you to please meet somebody. Fernando, you bring your family up here. This is the Fernando and his family. Bert, here you are.
We have here a Westchester County Vietnam Service Award. Everything we just said applies to you personally and the sacrifice you made. And you're coming back home safe and sound. To have a family such as before us now is a grateful gift. And we, a grateful nation, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. Yes,
Thank you for your service.
Legislator Catherine Park, it's up to you. And we're also going to call upon George. Steve Otis.
Steve Otis.
Steve Otis.
I want to start again. I think these words cannot be spoken enough. Thank you. Thank you to the men and women who have served, and we really are so grateful for what you have given to this country. I also want to note two other things. Besides being a reminder to all of us that people actually went and put their lives on the line for the values of our democracy. Each of these people that got up here earlier that spoke, they really imparted was wisdom. each of them I heard mention peace. And I say that because they know from their experience, war is ugly, war is a last resort. You go to war to fight for our democracy, but peace is what we must work for each and every day. That means right here in our communities, we are unified. We are together. Differences on issues do not matter. We are one, and we are Americans. So I want to say thank you again. You have, again, the ceremony's been a wonderful ceremony, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, and it's an honor to be here and to acknowledge the veterans that are here and the veterans who are not here. Growing up for me, my father resided in Flanders Fields on every, both Veterans and Memorial Day. And it was a reminder in that beautiful poem that whether it was Veterans Day or Memorial Day, once you were in the service, you were in the path of the possibility of death. And I think it's something that we have to step back, those of us who did not serve, and say, what an incredible responsibility you took on our behalf and on behalf of our beautiful democracy. And as the others have said, today is a day we're so proud to be American. We are united as Americans. We stand here in awe and in gratitude for what you have done. And we know as a country we have a long-lasting obligation every day, not just on these special days, every day, to improve the lives of the veterans who have come home and of those who did not come home, to honor them. Thank you very much.
This year for Veterans Day, I chose to look at an old passage, an old speech of Franklin Roosevelt's in June of 1940 at the University of Virginia, and I thought appropriate for this time, which is that he reflected upon what was going on in the world in 1940 and the concern that all Americans had about the fact that democracies around the world were being threatened. Democracies were somehow becoming out of fashion, and this was a concern. And what would happen, and pose this question to these young graduates at the University of Virginia. But the message for today is that what our generations of veterans have fought for is not just for our country, that is a great thing, but it is for ideas. It is ideas of freedom, of democracy, of individual freedom, of religious freedom, things that we believe in and thrive on here because of the sacrifice of the veterans in this country, but also values that this country has sought to promote around the world. And again today, we look at a time where around the world it maybe seems as if democracy is in some places in retreat, democracy in some places is out of fashion, and to remember that for generations it is the United States that has tried to promote these ideas, not just for us, but for all of mankind, as the Commander mentioned in his words. We thank you for your service, but for what it means and for what the generations of sacrifice have meant for ideas that this country stands for and that we are so important now and forever. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm told there's a representative here from Federal Representative Elliott. Congressman Englewood. Here's a hello. Thank you. Thank you for being here. This is final minute. Well, everybody, it's my chance to say thank you to my fellow veterans for their service. It's an honor to be amongst you here today. And thank you for honoring us with your good wishes and your good words. Thank you, gentlemen. In time of peace, we can use the ennobling virtues of war and put behind us its ugliness and suffering. In peace, we shall go forward together to scale new heights of achievement in unity of purpose and sacrifice for the common good. In tolerance for those of different faiths and creeds, in bravery to fight for social and economic gains, and in the discipline of good citizenship. We shall move forward in the sight of God as a strong nation in a peaceful world, I say. That concludes our comments. Thank you. Coffee and refreshments upstairs in our Legion Hall. And does anybody else, anything you want to add before we break up? What was your favorite part? The Girl Scouts. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please join us upstairs.